guys, and welcome back. As you know, I've just traveled all the way up to Nova Scotia to visit my good buddy, Joey. And I thought while I was here, it was the perfect opportunity to hear from the king himself about the care, keeping, maintenance, and all in all general information on freshwater stingrays. They're not a fish that I've ever kept, but I think they'll make a perfect addition for my monster species spotlights. So we're going to take the opportunity and ask Joey some of his key tips and information on freshwater stingrays.
So regardless of what you read online about freshwater stingray keeping, is nothing compared to the moment you actually get your first stingray. And I learned that firsthand several years ago. Freshwater stingrays open up a whole new world of keeping fish, and it's almost like everything you knew before almost doesn't apply to freshwater stingrays. Let's start off with where freshwater stingrays came from in the first place and why sometimes they could be difficult to keep. Millions of years ago, when the Andes Mountains were formed, a pocket of salt water was trapped. And by pocket, I mean almost like a mini ocean. Over several thousand years, they trapped actually saltwater rays in there, and over thousands of years, that saltwater lake slowly turned to freshwater. And with that, the rays also transitioned from being fully saltwater to freshwater. However, they didn't lose all of their saltwater counterparts. In fact, they lost their ability, like in terms of freshwater fish, they can maintain their osmotic regulatory system a lot easier than freshwater rays can. And because of that, to summarize, rays are constantly producing urea. They pee a lot. What happens when your fish are peeing in the water? They produce a tremendous amount of ammonia, and this is where it comes into play, where you're not really ready, or you weren't really set up for freshwater rays in terms of how much waste they actually produce. Now let's move into, with that in mind, let's talk about another thing that can be difficult when keeping freshwater rays, and that's getting them to actually eat. Not all freshwater rays have the same appetite or the aggression level. So you kind of want to start off with a ray that is a good eater. For your first ray, my recommendations are Motoro, Leopoldi, and Bosmani. Unfortunately, in that order, they'll also go from expensive. So a Motoro might cost you maybe $150. A Leopoldi maybe $800, $500, or a black diamond being $1,500, $2,500, something like that. And of course, Bosmani, which was only scientifically described in 2009, is a much more expensive stingray, costing thousands of dollars. Unfortunately, these are some of the best eaters. What you want to stay away from is the teacup stingrays. This is a trade name to describe mostly an unidentified ray that remains relatively small, typically referring to the reticulated stingray. Now, this is one of the most difficult stingrays to keep, except it's the teacup. So a lot of pet stores are going to say, oh, this is one of those small little rays. They stay small, like a teacup. However, they still get to about 16 inches in diameter and grow to about 2 feet long. If that's a small fish, then I don't know what I'm doing. The thing is most people get this teacup ray, the reticulated ray. Not only are they actually grow to be a bigger size, but they are a finicky eater. It's difficult to get them off of anything but bloodworms or live foods. Second most, I find that they are far more sensitive to any other ray, especially their bellies. For some reason, I find are far more easily irritated by the type of substrate you have, which can't be like a silica sand. You definitely need something that's not coarse and not abrasive, because underneath the rays is a very smooth, very soft skin. On top of them, they're covered in denticles, almost like a shark's skin, and it feels like sandpaper. The problem with getting into the easier to keep rays, and not only them being more expensive, is Motoros grow to 3 feet across. This is like a hula hoop in your tank. Motoros get big, the pearls get even bigger. Of course, the Bosmani grows to about 24, 30 inches across, and so do the Leopoldis. If you want to do your best bet in getting a small ray, try to get a male. Males don't get as big as the females. When it comes to these big fish, though, that means a big tank, and the smallest tank I would recommend is something with at least 32 square feet, 36 square feet. And not necessarily gallons being as important. Of course, with a big tank, you can have lots of gallons for dilution, but a lot of people will recommend a tank that's 8 feet long by 4 feet wide for an individual ray, or up to 3, so 1 to 3. So not only is the ray can be pretty expensive, you have to invest in these massive aquariums that is a huge investment, and for the next 25 years, you have a new pet to take care of, which means ongoing costs. Not only do you need a big aquarium, you need big filtration. And by big filtration, I just don't mean a few big canister filters. I mean anything that can hold a massive amount of biological media. And to couple that, we need to do massive water changes all the time, based on the fact that I mentioned earlier, they're constantly producing ammonia, probably a tenfold in comparison to a fish similar in size. Then, of course, diet. What are we going to feed them? Well, these are garbage disposals. If you can get them eating, they'll eat almost anything. And they eat a lot of it. Interesting thing about rays is they're in the family of sharks and skates as well, which is the elasmo branch. They don't have a single bone in their body. They're made up of hardened cartilage, for the most part, which makes up their skeletal structure. Because of that, they don't necessarily stunt. So what you might see sometimes is that you can buy a ray and your friend can buy a ray and theirs is growing much faster, but it's just based on their diet and they're feeding a lot more. So you can sort of control the growth rate of your first stingray if it's going to take you some time to get to a larger aquarium. So to summarize, rays are a lifetime commitment. They are a massive financial commitment as well, and they're going to take up a massive square footage of your home. But in the end, they're one of the most fascinating fish that you could possibly keep. However, when talking about stingrays, we of course have to talk about the first word in their name, which is sting. They get this name from their spines on their tails. These are typically referred to as barbs. Of course, you guys know Steve Irwin and how he died. He was swimming alongside a massive saltwater stingray that got spooked, and it wasn't that it stung him once, it stabbed him many times and hit his heart. If it didn't hit his heart, he probably would have survived. But what happens is they inject a venom, a neurotoxin. It's not necessarily going to poison you. It's not a poisonous fish, but they are venomous. It's going to cause excruciating pain, and there is no anti-venom available. What you have to do if you get stabbed in the hand or anything like that is run your hand under as hot water as you can possibly bear, almost to the point where you're scalding yourself, and hopefully this will coagulate the venom and stop it from spreading. Unfortunately, down in the Amazon, where these stingrays are typically collected, if you are not a fish collector, stingrays are viewed as an absolute pest. Why? They're going through the fishermen's nets, killing all their fish, ripping apart their nets. These guys get big and powerful. I've shown Rachel before how they have the ability to move big boulders and rocks, and they're only maybe 10 inches across. However, what if you step on one in the Amazon with their type of health repair? A lot of the times they get badly infected, and it causes a tremendous amount of hardship on that individual who can't miss a day of work. So a lot of the times these guys are killed on site, or their tails cut off and tossed back into the water, unfortunately. But in the home aquarium, you still face the fact of being stung, but rays do not have their stingers to attack you. They're there for defense. So as long as you are aware of the fish and you respect them, don't chase them around, they will never sting you. There is always the case, so certainly use caution. On the topic of their barbs, a couple of interesting facts is that they shed them usually every 3 months, just like a shark losing its teeth. At any given time, a ray typically has 2 barbs. One is almost out, a new one is coming in, and they will overlap each other. So when your ray sheds its stinger or its barb, sometimes you won't know it, so be careful when you are in the substrate because it could be buried in there. So a lot of the times, beginner hobbyists, or what I recommend is starting your freshwater stingray off in a bare bottom aquarium. And if you're familiar with my channel, I did that for years. It maintains water quality and, of course, doesn't allow the abrasion of any substrate on the rays, and you can find the barbs a lot easier. That 3-month period, though, rays also gestate or give birth to live pups. They're a live bearer, and it usually takes anywhere from 90 to 120 days to give birth. And depending on the species of the ray and the size of the ray, that could vary, as well as the litter, how many pups they'll have, and we call them pups, which is pretty adorable. Anyways, there's so much more to learn about freshwater stingrays. I can literally go on and on forever. This is my favorite fish by far. I have an absolute passion for them, but if you'd like to know any more information about stingrays or anything of the like, I'm sure you'll be able to find some information on my channel as well.
As always, I hope you guys have enjoyed learning more about this really unique monster species, and I hope that you take the opportunity to go to Joey's channel and really look through those videos about stingray care, and I'll make sure to put a few links in the description below. This was a really unique opportunity to get you guys first-hand information.
Yeah. I apologize if I missed out on a few aspects. I didn't think I should have took some notes or some bullet points or to make sure I cover all of the bases, of course. Again, this is one of the most, the fish that I'm most passionate about, and of course, we're just kind of doing this on the fly. So this is just off the top of my head. If you have any comments or questions or suggestions for future videos for Rachel or myself, of course, just leave them in the comment section below.
And make sure you guys don't stop watching, because I'm going to get some good footage of the rays for you, but I really wanted to focus on the information that Joey could provide. And since we had just fed the aquarium, the rays were feeling satiated and happy and not very desperate for attention. So stay tuned and I'll show you some more footage of them now. So it's really, really important to remember with these guys that they come from waters with a lot of flow. So having all of the power heads or a high turnover rate is really important, not only for their filtration needs, but their oxygenation needs, because these guys really do, for the most part, prefer warmer waters. And I don't really think that pictures or video do justice to the incredible strength, power, and beauty of these fish. And these guys are just babies, really. They're going to get at least twice this size, and they're just absolutely impressive, powerful fish. This really makes me want to get a big aquarium. And I think it's important to mention as well, when you're keeping them, that these guys quite often will climb the glass. And as you see in Joey's aquarium, they climb the glass by the edges, which pushes all that substrate back. I've heard him talk about this in his videos a ton of times. So because of that, it's a good idea in a ray aquarium to have some sort of lid or barrier just to prevent them from splashing water out or potentially escaping.